Okay, that'd be good. All right, well, I know we got several items on here, along with a lot of training. So, are you guys good? Did you have anything you wanted to report? Just relax behind it.
Yep.
I hear you on that. Okay, well, we want to welcome our friends here from Hill Air Force Base. So, not sure who's going to take that on. Sorry.
I'll start out. All of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Wonderful.
Okay, all right. Well, we're glad you're here, and we look forward to this presentation here.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time. And I understand you have some exciting training to get to, so we'll definitely try and respect your time. However, if you have questions, we'll take as much time as you want to answer those. If there's information that maybe we can't answer right away or it's a little more detailed, we can always follow up with emails or even another meeting in the future. So my name is Jason Dalpass. I'm a remedial project manager at Hill Air Force Base. We manage the cleanup program, and I've brought some of my coworkers with me who will also be presenting. So this is Mr. Mark Erginski here, Ms. Payfin Tamashiro, and then in the back hanging out there is Carly Sidaway. Now I know everyone has a boss, right? So our boss, and you have to do what your boss says. Our boss asked us to take a couple photos because we have this little newsletter. So they want us to take an exciting photo of this briefing. So I wanted to see if that was okay with you, if Carly, during the middle of it, maybe snatches a photo so you're not, you don't tie her up in handcuffs and run around the place. Would that be okay?
If you tell us, so we want
Okay,
to,
yeah, make sure you're
we
not.
want our best side.
You don't want to have anything in your mouth.
And just so you know, we are live streaming, so
Okay, all
there's more
right.
people that get to see this.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that heads up. All right, so let's get right into it here. We have not been here for quite a while to do an update, so it is a little background. We have contamination. Chemicals were historically disposed of on Hill Air Force Base, unfortunately improperly back decades ago. And as a result of that, we have contaminated areas of groundwater. So the purpose of the briefing today is just to give you an update on the cleanup progress and see if we have any questions that you have that we can answer. So I'd like to take just a minute here and describe what you're looking at here, because you'll see similar graphs and figures on the rest of the briefing. So we have two different contamination plumes here in Layton City, and they're the result of what are called chlorinated solvents. And as engineer nerds, we have to give everything big fancy names and acronyms. So the first one is called trichloroethene. This was part of solvents that were used to clean aircraft parts during the maintenance activities back in the day. And they made their way into groundwater. So we have two different plumes that are shown here. Because of the different chemical properties, the plumes travel at different rates in the groundwater. So the TCE plume, sorry my pointer won't work, is the one here in the blue and green color here that you see. And we're only showing you the portion here that starts at the base boundary. And you can see it comes about to I-15. And then the other plume we have here is another chlorinated solvent called 1,2-dichloroethane, or we will say in the rest of the briefing 1,2-DCA. And you can see here in purples and pinks, this one is longer and stops here at about Bayview Park. That's what we're looking at, Bayview Elementary, Bayview Park there. To clarify, the boundary that we're showing here is the area where the concentrations in groundwater exceed the drinking water standards. So if there's contamination above the standard, you see it here in a lighter color, and then the higher concentrations, and these are shown here. You also have these in your handouts too, if that's easier to see. The darker colors would represent the higher concentrations. Okay, and I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, feel free to ask at any time as we go along here. So we have two treatment systems that help as part of the remedy for this contamination that help clean up our plume. One is located at the base boundary. We call that the base boundary containment system. And the other one, which was installed at a later date, is our 1,2-DCA, back to the chemical name, extraction system, located right in Bayview Park there. And the purpose of the two systems is this system cuts off the plume, you could say, so that contamination does not continue like it did for the earlier decades to go into Layton City, where this other one here for the DCA system, the purpose of that is to stop the plume from expanding any further. So two different purposes there for two different plumes. Okay, this is, I think, a very interesting graph here. This shows you, we monitor as part of our cleanup program, and based on that, we just developed these plume maps. And what you're looking at here on the left is a plume from 2005, based on some data in that time frame. And then you see the plume as we understand it based on last year's sampling. And although those plumes may look very similar, I would like to point out one difference here that's a little harder to see on the screen, that you have areas of higher concentration that were located within the plume. So if you look at the dark purple and you look at the yellow areas, you'll see that those are either gone or much smaller. And so even though looking at it from above on a map, the aerial extent is very similar, with a few exceptions. The actual mass of the plume, as we calculated in those about 20 years, has reduced by 65%. So the good news is the treatment systems we have in place are having an effect, and the natural processes are taking place to decrease the quantity of those plumes. One note here, you may be wondering what's going on with these two plumes that were kind of seemingly in the middle of nowhere. Well, we found during the investigation phase that historically there were some drain fields put in as farmers' fields, and they all happened to daylight. Back in the day, there was a pond here north of the mall, and so basically the contaminated groundwater that emerged was transported to this area and created these plumes, which now, as of today, are no longer in existence. Okay, one thing I wanted to mention here before I turn it over to Mark is we've been working, let me go back and show you one thing. If you'll notice here, the end of this plume, it's fairly straight here, and if you were to look closely at its position compared to this cul-de-sac, you'll see it looks like the plume has kind of taken a turn here. And so what we've had to do since we started operation of this system is this last year we went and did an investigation to verify, because of the shift in the position, that we're still capturing the plume appropriately. So we worked with the Parks Department and your engineers to come up with a plan to put in some new monitoring wells, which you see here in red, and do some other work to confirm the position of the plume. Well, the good news is we confirmed it. It was as we thought. It hasn't gone any further that direction than we had mapped it out. But as a measure of safety, to make sure we're fully capturing it, this is what we consider the capture zone here for the system. We would like to install an additional extraction well in this area here that I'm showing in red, and that would be, to reference, give you a bit of reference there. This is zoomed in a little bit. So at Bayview Parks, these are the tennis courts, and this would be the parking lot as you're coming in from Main Street. So our proposal here would be to work again with the city engineer and the Parks Department to add another well in this vicinity if we can find a location that works well for everyone, and then connect that here via this dotted line into our, we have an existing manifold or control system that then runs the pumps and then takes the discharge away for us. So that was kind of the big news here, is we'd like to pursue this, hoping that we can get something in place either in the coming fall or in spring of next year. Before we move on to a different topic, any questions?
When you talk about, I don't know what you call it, a well, an extraction, so is it capped?
Okay, so
So it's buried?
Yes, that's a great question, and I should have mentioned that. I even have a little a point on that. So you would have a drill rig that would come in, and so for a period of maybe a week or so, there would be a big rig parked there and some folks working. But after they're done, essentially, there would be no evidence of it from the ground surface except for a manhole type cover. Yeah, so you'd have some sort of manhole that our workers would have to go access, and if they ever need to work on the well or replace the pump or whatever, they would then pull all that out. But essentially, once the work's done and all the trenching is done, it would just be like any other manhole in the parking lot. Okay, all right, so, yes.
What's the estimated depth of the plume and also of your sampling wells?
Okay, great question. So in this area, I will get back to you if I lie to you, but I want to say we're at about 150 feet where we would propose putting a well in. So we use some innovative technology to profile the soil and sample various intervals all the way down to that. When we install an extraction well, they still have to design and figure out the optimal size of the screen, the length of it. But typically it would be maybe 20 to 30 feet of screen, clear down at 150 feet or so, and then it would pull that water in up through a pump. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. And you're extracting the water, how much water is that? Is that what's cleaning it, or?
Yeah, so essentially what the water is doing, the extraction of that is making, if you think of, let's say you have a Slurpee at 7-Eleven, and you suck it through the straw and it kind of makes a cone there as you do that. That's called a cone of depression. So we lower the level of the groundwater so that naturally it might be flowing from this direction down to here, but we create this zone where we're then capturing the groundwater into that well. So the well pumps the water out, and then it's discharged through our system. And so the treatment, it's not designed to treat the water, it's designed to capture the plume before it expands any further, if that makes sense. Did that answer your question?
So what do you do with that water?
Okay, thank you. So we have a permit with the state of Utah to take that water that's then discharged from that point, and it actually it goes through some piping and it's discharged to Case Creek. Okay, so I know you're thinking, why did I just pull groundwater from 150 feet and discharge it to Case Creek? Okay, so all I can say on that matter is that there is some treatment that goes along in the pipeline as it is transferred, and according to the state of Utah levels and what we're looking at, we're well below the treatment limits. So we monitor that to make sure it doesn't violate any permits or anything, but that is what happens with the water once it's pulled out. Okay, I know, I'm getting some wrinkles foreheads.
At what point in Case Creek, where is that?
I would have to, I could show you on a map, but I'll have to, I don't know the exact address of street corners.
Down on Weaver Lane, Clint. It runs all the way down Angel Street and down Weaver Lane.
Thanks for the backup there.
So I think it's important to remember though that those chemicals are very volatile, and I'll talk about that before. And so as it is moving through the creek, it's basically creating vapors, and once they're out into the sun they break down very quickly.
Great, thank you.
What does breakdown mean?
They break down into non-hazardous, non-harmful.
Right, the various components, the 70 and the chemical it was, that turns into other less harmful compounds. Pardon me?
Oh, we were just discussing where that water's gonna, it ends up out in the nature conservancy area, and then eventually, it could end up in the lake, Great Salt Lake, but yeah, depends.
Important thing to remember, which you do, but we've been having these presentations for years, which always been well, is that and I think the gentleman mentioned it, the concentrations are so far below any standard. So when you hear plume, you immediately think that it's a dangerous. I mean, you correct me if I missed any of this, but the levels that they're treating they're doing it, I think, not because there's a belief that it's a hazard to the community. They're doing it as to be a good, responsible, conscientious entity, right? The United States Air Force and the government. I'm not trying to speak for you,
No,
but
please.
the proportions we're talking about are millions and billions,
Parts per
billion. So there's initially when you hear this, you think, oh my heavens, we've got this dangerous plume with all this in. But these are so far below whatever the normal regulatory standards are that it's really, to me, it's a good faith effort. It's not a health safety issue as much as it is an effort to say we created a problem and we're gonna work in good faith to try to fix it. So when you talk about it going into the creek, there are probably a lot of, just minimize it, there's probably a lot of things that are going into the creek that are a lot worse than this. This just happens to be a very public process. So I'm not trying to minimize it, but there isn't any need for alarm. There's nobody in danger in the community because of this. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I think so. That was, I appreciate you chiming in there. I should point out that even though we said that the groundwater is not affected your drinking water, the state considers the shallow groundwater there a potential future source of groundwater one day. So because of that classification, we have to use the drinking water standard. So according to the EPA, they're saying anything above the level where we've shown that in color, you wouldn't want to drink for the rest of your life for 30 years. They have, their studies and calculations. So that's the standard we work with. So hopefully we can clean that up so that potentially one day it could be a groundwater source, even though realistically it probably wouldn't be. We have a much better source deeper within the aquifer.
We pull at what, 800 feet, Steve?
Yeah, we pull out of the Delta Aquifer, which
So
is much deeper. It's about 800 to 1,000 feet, and this is 150 feet.
And you've got
Sunset
literally hundreds of feet of clay that prevents that from being connected, which is a real good news story for us.
Well, and according to the plume and the toxicity levels, they've really mitigated over the years by you being proactive here, so. I mean, this is a good update.
Wonderful. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Mark. He's going to talk about another aspect of the
We
cleanup
do
program.
sample for these same chemicals in our drinking water wells and things, just to put everybody's mind at ease.
Yeah.
But that's because the state requires us to do that in the EPA. So we haven't found any of this in there.
Oh, I better figure out how to use that. All right. So I'm Mark Roginski, and I'm in charge of the indoor air sampling program. And as Jason mentioned, these are volatiles. So they want to be in the air more than they want to be in the water. And what we found is in places where the groundwater is fairly shallow, very, very close to the ground surface, those chemicals will evaporate, move through the soil, and they can enter into, I guess the pointer doesn't work. They can potentially enter into any occupied buildings that are above them. So that process is called vapor intrusion, and the only way that you know that vapor intrusion is occurring is by sampling the indoor air. We have action levels established by EPA and the Utah Department of Environmental Quality. If we measure the chemicals in a house above those action levels, then we recommend allowing the owners to allow the Air Force to install what's called a vapor intrusion mitigation system. And that's an example of one right there. They're very similar to the radon systems, where they would pull the vapors out from underneath the foundations and out the top, where they would break down very quickly in the sunshine, and prevent any of those from coming through the cracks in the foundations and into the home. The Air Force owns those systems, and we maintain those as well. Let's see, next slide. So you've seen the plumes. If you'll notice these yellow lines right here, this is what we call the affected area, and that's the area with the potential for vapor intrusion to occur. The big outline out here, TCE is primarily the chemical with the potential. We have a small area right here where both the 1,2-DCA and the TCE can volatilize and come into the houses. You'll notice that the affected area is kind of over the plumes, but there's also areas, say like right here, that's included in that, and that's because Jason had mentioned that that there's a lot of those field drains that have been installed. And what we found is that those field drains can transport the vapors into the areas that aren't necessarily over the groundwater contamination. And so we've included those in our areas to sample. I think that's, any questions about that? Yeah.
How many mitigation units have been installed?
Next slide.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you a number. Picture this affected area, and we're going to talk about the number of houses that are in there. So if you look at the very top line up there, there's 878 homes and businesses in the affected area. Most of them are homes, just a few businesses. To break that number down, if you look at the pie chart over here, 550 of those homes we've already sampled, and we've determined that vapor intrusion is not occurring. If you look at the purple, we have 158 of those locations where we've never sampled. The owners, residents have never allowed us into the homes. The green there, we have an additional 100 where we have some sampling data, but we don't have enough to say that vapor intrusion is not occurring. So we need to get into those houses again to take some more sample. And then you asked about the vapor intrusion mitigation systems. There's 70 of those installed in the city of Layton. Now we do several different methods of outreach to I guess educate the Layton citizens and also get their permission to sample the indoor air in their homes. So we use a direct mailing where we send a letter with a self-stamped return postcard where they can sign up for indoor air sampling. We also use your city website and social media. And then we also do what we call a door-to-door visit where we actually bang on the doors and try to sign up the folks there on their steps for indoor air sampling. We did just do one in early January where we visited 209 locations and we were able to sign up 42 locations for indoor air sampling. So between all of this outreach, this sampling event, which started in October and ends at the end of March here, we had 68 residents that agreed to sampling, one business that agreed to sampling, 44 residents that just right out said no, and then the remainder, 200 and some residents, we just didn't get any response with at all. And so we do this indoor air sampling annually, and so everybody that said no or didn't respond, they'll get another chance to sign up and sample. And we'll continue until either the plumes are gone and we don't have the vapor intrusion problem, or we, by chance, get everybody to say yes, and we can either determine that vapor intrusion is not occurring, or we can install a vapor mitigation system to prevent the vapors from coming in the homes. I think that's my last slide.
Another question.
Yeah.
You can help Steve, or any engineer, land engineer, or a hydrologist, or anything. Anyway, with all the water we've received, or going to receive in the next 3 months, 2 months, is the water table going to change? Is it going to rise and create more of a problem for these vapors if it gets closer to the surface?
There's
Potential.
Yeah, there's that potential, I would think. Would you guys agree? Yeah.
I mean, historically, there's a range of the groundwater, and so we're not at unprecedented levels, even though we're very high now. So I think there could be a chance that the concentrations coming out of the ground change a bit as you're closer or further away. But I think historically, it's within the range of what we've seen as far as the depth of groundwater.
Yeah, I don't think that will change the
This is
size
usual.
of the affected area.
Good question.
You do this annually, and I'm just looking at that door-to-door visit in January.
Mhm.
Is there a reason why winter or that time of year is when we want to do those door-to-door
It
visits?
is, and that's a great question because what we found, we've been doing the sampling since about 2003, and we've been sampling all seasons. What we found is the greatest potential to detect vapor intrusion is in the wintertime when it's cold. Your furnaces are running, so they're creating a stack effect, so they're basically pulling the vapors in as the warm air rises up and out the house. So we start in October, and then again at the end of the March we'll be done because it's already starting to warm up. So that's the reason why. And we use a sampling device that we leave in the home for 26 days, and it passively collects any of the vapors that may be in the home. One thing we also learned is vapor intrusion is very variable. So it may be occurring one day, but maybe not the next day. So by leaving a sampling device for a long period of time, like almost a month, that gives us a better chance also of detecting vapor intrusion if it's occurring. So the other thing I did want to just mention, kind of pulling off of Jason's presentation, there's a lot of not necessarily a lot, but there's some consumer products that have the same chemicals that we have in the groundwater. For example, gun cleaners, engine degreasers, some hobby glues contain the TCE in them. And we know that because if they're in the home, they can create a false positive for us. So we survey the residents and say, hey, if you have any of these consumer products, please remove them out. So we want to be measuring something coming from the groundwater and not from a bottle on the shelf. And then the 1,2 DCA, we find that in the hard plastic decorations, like your Christmas decorations. They emit the 1,2 DCA. And I don't know, I probably have some in my home. So it makes it really hard to sample for that because it is so prevalent already with the consumer products.
So maybe you mentioned this, but so you showed a slide from 2005, but when did this project begin? Find the plume and start trying to mitigate it.
Yeah, so what we call the investigation phase began actually in the 90s, I want to say mid-90s. And then the way the Superfund process works is you figure out where it is and you come up with a proposed remedy and the public comments on that. And it ends with what's called a record of decision. So that was signed by all the parties and public comment was finished in 2005. So we actually had some of our systems in place before then proactively, but the official requirement to clean up and where what the remedies were was started in 2005.
But it's also a learning process because we didn't understand vapor intrusion until somewhere in the early 2000s. So those early days, we weren't even sampling indoor air. We were taking samples of the groundwater to see where the contaminants might be. I'm going to turn it over to Layton Tomashiro. We've got just a couple more slides to share with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Layton Tomashiro, and I manage this relatively new program called PFAS, which is per or polyfluoroalkyl substances. Don't make me say it again. It's PFAS or PFAS. I said it's relatively new, it's because the investigation about this group of compounds didn't start until late, I want to say probably 2017, 2018, compared to most of those other programs that started in the 90s or even earlier. So this is relatively new, and you probably heard about it recently in the news as well. And there's also movies made about it or a documentary made about these compounds. This is a group of compounds that now it's up to 9,000 plus chemicals now. It's in this group, but they're currently EPA only has data or risk values that they are using as screening purpose in 6 compounds. So 6 out of these 9,000 compounds is what we know about the risk values that we're using to screen for environmental investigation. And as you can see, like all these products here that's listed have some of these PFAS compounds in our baby mother. So some of the fabric, carpet, some food wrappers, and Teflon pans. And we use it, for the last 20, 30 years, and, a whole bunch of things. But for the military or for Air Force specifically, the firefighting foam, or AFFF, is the primary concern for these chemicals. And at Hill Air Force Base, of course, that's kind of the primary source of these chemicals. But just so you know that we are currently starting investigating other chemicals that are not related to the foam. So we have started the investigation. Mayor and I actually went out and did quite a few door-to-door, knocking to figure out if anybody's using groundwater as their drinking water source. And back then, we haven't started doing any investigation. We just want to make sure, we know how many people are out there that are doing, that are using groundwater as their drinking water source. And we just want to test the groundwater to make sure that their primary drinking water doesn't have PFAS in there. And just a quick summary, we only identified, of like hundreds of wells that we noted on the state's record. There are only 5 properties in this area that actually are using groundwater as their primary drinking water source. And unfortunately, all of them are in Layton. So we were able to sample their water, and they all screened in much deeper intervals, at least 300 feet below. And they all turned out to be non-detectable. So that was the good news about that. However, recently the threshold for the drinking water screening level has dropped significantly. Back then, we were using 70 parts per trillion. So when they were talking about it was all in parts per billion range. We're talking about parts per trillion range. So back then, when we were looking at them, we're using 70 parts per trillion as our screening level. And now it's dropped down to 4 and 6 level. And actually 2 days ago, EPA, for the first time, they actually proposed drinking water standard for PFAS group of 6 compounds. And their proposed level for 2 of the most common ones is 4 PPT, parts per trillion. And the other ones are more complicated. They're using them as a mixture, so there's a risk evaluation you have to go through. So it's a little bit more complicated, but it's a little bit higher than before. So we're looking at single-digit parts per trillion now. But those samples that we collected from those 5 properties, they were all non-detect, but the detection limit were somewhere around 5 or a little bit over, somewhere like right at 4 and somewhere like just above 4. So we will have a task or a contract that will be put in place to go back and resample those locations just to confirm. But most likely, if I'm looking at how clean the data is, most likely those homeowners probably won't have any problem with continuing to use their wells at this point. So currently we are doing investigation at the site and at the base. So since 2020, we started this project to investigate all the potential sources of AFFF where we have used foam and disposal foams or release the foam into the environment. So those red circles of dots are the source areas on base that we have identified that we have released foam into the environment. And based on the current investigation result, we have identified these plumes. 1, 2, 3, 4 plumes. And then this area most likely is just still in the soil, and the groundwater is very deep, like around 200 feet up there. So it's not, we're not seeing PFAS in the groundwater yet. But these other locations, they are. And as you can see, Layton, there are 2 separate plumes here based on our current data. But as you can see, these are all kind of dashed lines. That means we haven't finished the investigation yet. So this is based on the first round of data sampling, or data collection that we have. So we currently are planning on stepping out and putting more wells in, and we're working with the city staff to make sure that the locations that we pick are okay for us to put additional wells in, so we can continue to delineate. So we don't know whether these 2 eventually will be connected as one plume, or even connected with that large plume from the base, or they are 3 separate plumes and all. So we are continuing to do this investigation. The drilling is continuing probably about, it's gonna go on to either summer or fall this year. And then we'll collect samples from there, and then we will update this plume map. So this is kind of where the current status of the groundwater contamination. So I know you guys talk about, there are 2 plumes down there, so now there are 3 plumes. One is the PFAS plume that we haven't fully delineated yet. So we'll continue to update you. Are there any questions for me? Good.
I'd like to just point out that the PFAS is not volatile, so it will not be part of the indoor air.
Right. And that's probably part of the reason why they call them forever chemicals, because it just lasts a long time in the environment. It's very hard to degrade. And there are a lot of research now trying to figure out how to destroy PFAS, after we extract them, instead of just doing filtration, and then you still have that media with PFAS in there. So there are a lot of research going on now. Hopefully we'll have more information in the future.
Question, I'm looking at these crash. That recent crash of the F-35,
yes.
was different foam used?
No, there is AFFF in there, but it's probably one of the safer ones, although we are investigating that crash. It was in October last year. Yeah, so we have a new site that we're gonna investigate to see if there are any residual PFAS at the crash site. And then once that's determined, if there is, then we will add them into this delineation program. So we're still on the first phase of that. Thanks for asking that question.
Okay. That's a good update, and I hope that you guys can see that Base is a good partner here in protecting our citizens.
One more question. If residents are, what's the hotline?
The hotline. Great lead in. So they're welcome to contact any of us, but right there along the top, you have my number. We also have a public affairs representative. So top corner, you're good. I did want to, Carly, can you just mention the RAB real quick?
So there are 2 representatives for Layton. There's a community rep, and there's also a city rep, and Steve Jackson is actually your city representative. And I email him incessantly, so he has a direct line to me. I can farm you out to the people who know way more than me. We do have a vacant spot for the Layton community position. Clint Holm, he was your community rep for like 8 years plus. He's been a great representative, but he's decided to resign, and so we are soliciting. So I will be getting in touch with the city, like maybe your website folks, to maybe just help us advertise for that within the next week or 2.
What type of qualifications do you want?
0. No. They're just willing to serve and help. It's a volunteer position. So it's just somebody who's interested in helping out.
It's not paid.
And we do meet quarterly, and it's a really good
We
group
do have a
of
lot of
people.
citizens that reach out and want to help. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
good.
it's
Fine.
voice acted. Cool.
Finally, I qualified.
Just somebody who cares, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you. Take care, thank you.
So you can see there's some good information. That packet's a good wrap up for us to kind of review when we need to. Let's go ahead and move on. I know we've got I was gonna say, we haven't got a lot of time, but we're gonna get through these items, and we'll start off with Kim regarding the elections.
I provided you all a handout of costs associated with past elections and most costs for the election, and a copy of the contract. In the past, the city's contracted with the county to administer its election. With my oversight, I'm proposing that again. Given the climate that associated with elections, I have the most confidence in the county providing us an election with integrity. Their processes are by far superior. They've got the equipment, the manpower that has experience. It would be difficult at best for me to try and manage an election and pull in lay people from within the community and try to train them, bring them up to speed. And so this is on the agenda tonight for approval of the resolution that would approve that contract. Do you have any questions?
Any questions, yes? Okay.
Thank you so much.
You work quick. Okay, let's go ahead then and turn the time over to Mr. Crane. It looks like you got, geez, the whole rest of the meeting.
Oh, yes. What I've always wanted is time. Let me introduce Mark Harrington. Mark is one of our attorneys that has recently joined us, fairly recently joined us during this last year. Mark comes to us with a considerable background in law enforcement, and he also comes from the dark side of the force. He was a defense attorney for how many years, Mark?
22.
22 years. And so he knows all the ins and outs of prosecuting cases, and it's always good to have somebody who's on the other side to be able to do that. But in addition to that, we've had Mark review the animal control ordinance, and if you remember, things have changed as far as the animal control situation goes, and now we've got, animal control is a separate entity under the county, and they will take care of all animal control issues in the city. And what they would like to do is they would like to have us adopt the ordinance that they are using. Now, when we first began years ago, we essentially used that as a boilerplate. And so I had Mark go back through, the entire, both ordinances and compare them back and forth. And am I accurate if I say, Mark, that there were no substantive changes in the new ordinance in comparison to the one that we're going to adopt tonight? And if you do, and the old one, right?
Correct.
And so it's just simply a matter of, same thing we do with traffic. Our traffic violations and criminal violations, we refer to the state code. We don't put the whole state code in our ordinance. Well, that's what we've done here, is we just simply refer to the county ordinance, which the county officers will enforce. And so if you have any questions, I know that it's been out online. You've had a chance to, I hope, look at it, but it really doesn't amount to anything different than what we have in place right now. I think the only thing that wasn't in there was just a reference to the feral cat situation, and that's not because the program's on, but it's...
Right, it's not a separate, it's embedded in another statute, but it's all there. The cattery and the cat community and that kind of thing. A few of the definitions have been modified a little bit, but it was streamlined is basically what's happened from the city statutes. But everything that we had or have in our city statutes are contained somewhere, sometimes not separately designated, but within another ordinance that the county's covering.
And I raise that only because I know there are certain members of the council that are really, really interested in feral cats.
As long as they kill mice, I don't care.
Yeah, well, they still try to come indoors. Got another one.
Oh, is that right? I don't know.
I think people know about them.
But that's all we had to present to you on this one, so if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer, and Mark's prepared to talk about any.
I haven't had anybody reach out to me on it, I think, have you guys?
I know we talked we first talked about this, the number of combination of animals, did they decide at the county level just to go with one?
Maybe a
Not
question.
not the two options that they were talking about?
They did. Single option is three animals. And then in addition to that, you may have an actual service animal, one additional service animal. But it does need to truly be a service animal, so it would need to be one of the certified for certification. Am I accurate there?
Yeah, it just can't, you can't just call it a comfort.
Yeah.
It has to be
Be
certified.
certified and
Yes.
identified.
Yes.
So the other option was two, but you could apply for a third, and now it's just three.
No, it was more than two under the city, and then the county is just saying three.
I think it's, I haven't been involved with the recent, but the county ordinance, I think, said the options were 2 + 1, not counting the service animals. They're, by state statute, they're exempted out.
Exempt.
So 2 + 1 by permit from the county, they come out and do an inspection to make sure that, Mr. Jensen was a good caretaker of the animals, or 3 as a base + 1. And what I understood from Ashley was that they ended up with 3 + 1. So you have 4, and then if you had a service animal, that would be on top of it.
But the fourth is, permit for the fourth.
Yes, you have to go through an application process with the county, and none of those, anything over the 4 would put you into a kennel license category, where it's a land use decision that they wouldn't issue a kennel license unless the governing body of the city has approved it as a conditional use. So you're talking about community impacts and so forth. That's what I understood, and they, everybody in the county agreed to that, so there's no more options. That was is that, anything changed?
Yeah,
or did I-
so, that's correct.
Keep it simple.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was
Zach,
that
you're looking
confusing?
like you're
It-
questioning it.
It posted.
You okay?
Was ours 2?
Ours was 2.
Yeah,
Ours was 2, now it's 3.
it's a base, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a base. Yeah.
3 is the base, and then 1 service animal, or you have to apply for a fourth.
But it doesn't sound like it's an or though. It sounds like you can do 3 + 1 permitted, like you have to get a permit for that additional 4. The service animals are above that still.
But only 1 service animal.
Well, the service animal is the one you have to get a permit for, or no?
No,
No.
because service animals are, by the state's legislature stepped in and took away our ability, so it doesn't go to, the service animal doesn't go against any.
Right.
But it has to be registered as a service animal.
Yes, yeah.
And is it just one service animal or?
I believe so, but I'm not sure how they do that. Service animal could be an active service animal. I think the retired police dog counts as that. So there's some, but there has to be some certifications of that it was or is functioning as a legitimate service animal, not a, that doesn't include comfort. The comfort animal thing is a whole different issue. Everybody has their own definition of that. But
Tell me if I'm wrong, Mark, but to your question, Alex, if you got 2 people in the family that needed, if you had 2 blind people, for example, that needed a seeing eye dog, that would not be limited under state law. In other words, those additional animals that are actually certified to do those things
By the individual.
by the individual are not, if there isn't a limit to, you can't have, we had one situation where we had comfort animals,
Yeah.
and we had, 25 bunnies? But they were all important to this one person who,
Yeah, those don't count. It's got to be a licensed or certified service animal.
yeah, I think it's on a household basis too, so it's not, if you have, if you have 3 animals already and then your son and daughter-in-law or vice versa comes and lives with you and they have 3, that doesn't work. It's per household, per residence kind of a thing, so.
Sorry.
Not,
Does that change if it's an ADU, internal or external?
Ask Graham Moore.
that's a good
Or
question.
2 different
Yeah.
households on one lot?
That's a very good question.
I don't, yes, I wouldn't think that you have that by lot, but by residence. So if there's 2 separate residences, I assume that are under, that you could have that, but
Well, check-
That's
check
a
on
big
that,
that's
loophole.
the state.
If you think about it, I mean, with internal ADUs now, I mean, you've got the same space that you had before, and the intent of the ADU law is that the place looked like it did, before you actually added the additional ADU, both vehicles and otherwise. And so there may be reason to say, rather than having eight animals in one single house just because you add an additional ADU, I think there's a question as to whether or not that would be the case, but can we check on that and make sure?
Or actually, the detached ADU, but the internal ADU,
Yeah.
And that would be, you could have, that would be eight dogs, or that would be a serious
And you
problem.
can see where somebody could get around that by saying that they do have an ADU even though they don't, just to have the
Yeah.
additional animals.
The dogs live in the ADU.
Yeah, we're not gonna have them.
That was my question.
Does it?
I just
I don't
asked
think so.
Clint the same thing. Internal ADU, how does that affect the
Yeah.
limit?
We'll get an answer for that,
Because I remember, in the internal ADU bill, funny enough, I actually read it a couple days ago. It mentioned that they had to be complying with all city, but that was based on building codes and stuff like that.
Right.
But is there anything based on city ordinance? Because if they had 3 already, then the internal ADU has to be consistent with city ordinances. So if you have 3 new dogs that come in, that would be 6, right?
Yeah, my feeling is they don't count an internal ADU as an additional.
Yeah.
I think it's just one unit. People upstairs have to be the owners, and then you can rent it to somebody else. I think it would be wrong to assume that you can double the number of animals as a result of adding a basement apartment. I don't think that's.
Yeah,
Is
I
it-
think it's residence for the,
That's true, but I think the clarification needs to be made.
Yep.
That is definitely.
I agree.
Oh, yeah.
I think these guys bring up a very valid point on it.
Playing devil's advocate though, there's some homes with ADUs that are much larger than some duplexes. And a duplex would be 2 separate residences. So they could easily have that in a smaller space than a home with an ADU.
So a 2-family dwelling is not considered the same as an ADU.
Right,
And
I'm just talking size of residence.
yeah, I agree, 100%. And a lot of the homes now, Ivory, I know, is building most of their homes with the possibility of turning it into an ADU, an additional ADU as well. So you're right, they could be very big homes, but at the same time, I think the intent was that it looked the same as a normal residential home, but not adversely affect the neighborhood. Kind of like a home occupation. You can have a home occupation as long as it looks the same as the rest of the neighborhood. So we'll check on that, we'll get an answer for you on that.
What's your advice as far as action tonight?
If they do change it, it will have to be a global change amongst all the cities. So we'll go back to the county attorney and ask what the intent of it is, and we'll look at the ordinance a little more carefully to see whether or not it's addressed. If it's not, it will come back to you as an amendment. But it'll be an amendment for everybody, not just us.
I think it's not in the county, to that point, I think it's not in the county ordinance, the county will want to make
Yeah.
an adoption. So
I'm sure they would.
I think if we adopt something that says whatever the county ordinance is, it's going to present it.
What is that ordinance? Is it a health code? How do you?
So Mark, what is that? That ordinance is out of, is it a regular county ordinance, or is it under the health department?
I would think, I didn't see it in here, so I'm guessing the health department's.
In HB82 it says health codes.
Say that it has to, you have to abide by health codes.
Yeah, that the internal ADU can only be, it can't be prohibited if it's compliant with all applicable land use ordinances, building codes, health codes, and fire codes.
Does repealing and reenacting our code go through the planning commission as well, or is it just?
Not this one, because it's not a land use ordinance. But the land use provisions regarding kennels and that type of thing still remain the same.
So the comfort dog,
Gotta be
can a
one
whole
year.
family have
Needs to be one
5
to
comfort
3.
dogs?
Needs to be one.
You don't
It's not
have
a
one
comfort.
before,
You can't do
3 plus one more.
So it says only one.
No, it has to be
No,
a service
service.
animal, not a
Service,
comfort.
not a comfort.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you have a comfort animal, that has to fit into one through 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first 3
Okay.
animals.
But if you got 5 people that want a comfort dog in the same family.
No,
okay,
only
you
3
can't.
of them can.
Okay, so you
gotta
can't
share.
apply.
I was gonna say, share the dog.
Share the dog.
For purposes of helping to explain that to residents, would it make more sense, and I know we can't change the verbiage, but would it make more sense to speak on it as property as opposed to residence? Because when you have multiple people living in these internal units and separate units, they're thinking, well, this is my residence and this is their residence, but your property lines are not changing. So would that be more helpful in explaining this to residents who may want to know, like, the difference? And they want to argue, I guess, that they should have access to more.
It could be. Once again, I think there's a lot of things out there that may change. For example, they were looking this year and it didn't pass on authorizing individual rooms in a house to be rented. That might change, and external ADUs may also become an item in future years. So this ordinance is probably going to have to be adjusted. In that case, you may have a single lot with 2 units on it, that are authorized units, and so it would be each one. They're going to have to decide. We're going to have to decide whether we want to treat them as 2 separate dwelling units or not. But I think what we'll do is just that's a good idea. Right now, the way we're looking at it is we've got a single home on a single lot. You get the 3 and the 4.
Mm-hmm.
That's the rule. So, but that's a good point. So you're thinking on a single lot, one single home on a single lot, whether it has 2 units in it.
Right,
Yeah.
just for purposes of explaining
Yeah,
what
property.
the law is now,
Yeah.
because people consider residents
So you're up on
differently.
in the other meeting to explain this, Gary.
Well, our current
You're welcome.
ordinance doesn't call out ADUs.
No,
Lake cities.
no, it doesn't.
No.
It's just a residential unit, every residential unit, so. And then the state legislature messed things up.
Thanks, Ray.
You can change it. You can amend it. He's a good guy, he can do it.
Yeah,
I think it's a good idea, but we'll get that
he at
straightened
least
out.
listened early on to try to get it to where it's at now,
Yeah.
so that's a good thing.
He's.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and move on then to resolution 2318, which is Gary's favorite topic.
So, yes. What we determined to do, as you may recall, is to make sure that we go ahead and proceed forward with reestablishing the resolution that you guys established back in July of 2022, which is reaffirming the alignment of the road where it is, 2700 West. And also, because of the current litigation that's going on, we have a hearing on the 30th of March regarding immediate occupancy, but should immediate occupancy fail on that date, what we've determined to do is to go ahead and give the court another reason for issuing an order of immediate occupancy by redoing the resolution tonight. Really, it just has legal significance for us. It would set us back a number of days, but we wanted to make sure we weren't set back too far. If we waited till the 30th and had the hearing on the 30th, and for some reason the judge did not approve immediate occupancy, we would have to do this anyway. And so we'll go ahead and proceed to do this. And all this does is it's kind of a backstop or a protection against an order that may not be favorable to the city, although we are very confident that immediate occupancy will be granted on the 30th by the judge. So immediate occupancy is kind of like a TRO, or a temporary restraining order. The standard is very, very low, and all you have to do is just put in what they call a prima facie case. In other words, you just have to show that it's more likely that you'll prevail than not, and here are the elements, and then we've met the elements. We're checking off the boxes here again, just to make sure that we meet all the elements. If tonight we have property owners show up, they're to be given an opportunity to speak, and not in the public hearing or public comment portion, but in this specific portion. And so if somebody does And it's not anybody, it's just the property owners that have the right to speak tonight on this issue. And so if they are to appear, that would be the case. The two property owners that we're focused on are the two that we've not managed to purchase yet. And that is the Day property, which is shown on this slide, which consists of just under an acre of property. 0.82 or 0.83, I can't remember. I shouldn't have memorized that by now. And then the other one is the Hines property, which is kind of a mostly road, but it does provide a connection to the Hines property to the west as part of 2700. So those are the two parcels we're talking about, and so tonight that's the only focus that we have. The rest of them involved. We've worked with them and satisfied.
And the property owners, they know about the meeting tonight?
Yes.
They've been noticed
And
or notified, I guess.
they have been properly noticed. We send a notice out to them. You have to send it more than 10 days prior to the hearing or to the meeting. It's not a hearing, it's a meeting where they're given an opportunity to speak. That notice was sent. I can affirm that. So I think we're set to go. Your approval of this resolution will just give us the opportunity to make that argument if we need to in the future, that everything has been, the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed.
Is there any restriction on who is speaking? Can the property owner designate someone to speak on their behalf? Or can it be multiple people speaking?
That's a really good question, but the property owner or anybody associated with the property owner, for example, one of the families belongs to a trust, and so somebody representing the trust or the attorney for the property owner could speak. The general public would not be able to speak. So,
But if multiple members of the trust family show up, then we
Yes.
can acknowledge them as well,
yeah,
right?
that's a good question, and yes.
I think that's what you're
That's what
saying,
I'm
right?
asking. There are
That's a good
family
question.
members that
Yeah.
are not listed here, but who have interest in, who want to speak, and they're given that
Absolutely.
opportunity.
And this is an administrative decision,
Yes,
not a legislative decision.
that's correct.
So Gary, you said the general public wouldn't be able to, but this is during the citizen, their time to speak would be during the citizen comment period, right?
Yes, if the general public wanted to speak, that's a good point. Tyson is, they could speak during that citizen
They
comment.
can speak to any of the topics on the agenda, technically, because we don't have a public hearing tonight.
So you said we've already done this. Again, why? I mean, there's no deadline to the one we did
So,
last year, right?
the 30th is the date that the judge will hear the question of whether or not we did everything right before. We feel we did do everything right before. There are some issues that were raised by the attorney for the other side to make it very, very obvious that we did everything. And to make sure that if the judge does say, you know, this little thing here you didn't do, we want to make sure that we are able to immediately file for another motion for immediate occupancy, which would, within 21 days, we can obtain that. Or as soon as we can get before the court, if on the 30th, it doesn't go our direction. So this is more of a precaution, Tyson, than anything else. It's meant to, and the reason for the precaution is that we've got a contractor out there, we've got piping that's being put in and being ordered, and we've got ground that needs to be watered. We've got to put all those things in as quickly as possible, and we don't want it to be held up a day more than it has to be. And so if this is that 2 tracks that we said we were going to go down, along with, there's a center track negotiation, I guess, which has kind of failed at this point.
But nothing in this would prevent us from acquiring the property by negotiation.
No.
We could still do that. Because it's the same thing we did before, right? So it's just saying by negotiation or condemnation. So this is not we are condemning the property. It's just, we're just making sure procedurally we have our ducks in a row.
That's correct. And if at the end of if on the 30th things don't go our direction, we'll go ahead and file again and make sure that we don't lose a single day more than we have to, so we can get our contractor out there working. Which the contractor is working right now. He's working on the north end of the project, and right now it's pretty wet out there. So,
They're still digging.
but they're still out there working, so they're putting in the utilities.
So on the 30th, it goes our way, then this becomes a moot point.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
You guys good?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I would suggest we forego the training, interest of time, and the closed meeting is much more critical than the training. You do that another time.
What, no training for gas?
Shoot.
Is that vote by hand?
Just when you think you've got it all made, you know? I'm good to do it another time, it's fine.
I think we can cover it another time, and even if we need to, in our budget meeting, if we want to try to cover it and get it behind us, we could.
I'm good to, whatever you
Depending on how that time works.
Yes, that's the usual.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, knowing that that's the case then, I'll need a motion then to go into a closed door meeting. So we'll
Okay, Kim, are you good? You're good? You good back there? Okay, thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone out to our Layton City Council meeting this evening, March 16th. Our start time is slightly delayed due to a previous meeting, but I guarantee you we'll be on track going forward. So as customary, we like to start all of our meetings out with a prayer and a pledge in either order, however you'd like to. And each month, a different council member takes charge of that. And tonight, it is Councilmember Thomas.
Let's have the pledge.
Okay.
I don't know how else to say it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our Father in heaven, we're indeed grateful to be gathered in a meeting such as this, that we might be able to discuss the things which affect our city, our constituents. We pray that thy Spirit might be with us as we do this, that we may come to agreements, that we may be able to do the things which will allow the city to go forward. We're thankful for the opportunity. We're thankful for a land that allows us to meet such as this. We're thankful for the people that put these things in place, that we might be able to continue them. We pray for those that are not with us tonight, those that are serving in many foreign lands. We pray for their protection. And these things we thank thee for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay, thank you, Councilman Thomas. Okay, council, we have, looks like 3 sets of minutes. 4, 1, 2, 3, sorry. 3 sets of minutes that we need to approve. So if there's no changes or correction, I'll look for a motion.
I do have one correction of note for the council meeting minutes from February 16th, 2023. There was just a comment about the safe harbor and how that, it was my comment, but that comment was to mention that safe harbor, while it's a Davis County entity, that it's housed here in our city, and that the residents of our city are the ones who benefit primarily from that service. I believe in the minutes it was reflected that it was a Davis County primary. I'm not saying this correctly right now. 1 second. The minutes reflected that the service area was primarily for Davis County, which is accurate. But what I stated was that the services were provided to serve mostly residents of our city, because our city's the largest city.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Are you good with that?
Yes, I listened to the recording. She's correct, and I've made that correction in the minutes, but I wanted her to call it out in the meeting.
Okay, very good. Okay, with that, do you want to make the motion to adopt the minutes with your correction?
Sure. I move that we adopt the minutes from the council work meeting on January 5th, 2023, the council work meeting from February 16th, 2023, and the public meeting from February 16th, 2023 with the correction stated.
Very good. Second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we adopt the minutes as outlined. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We will now move on to our municipal announcements, and I know a couple of you have a few of those to give, so let's start down here with Councilmember Roberts.
Parks and Recreation have some activities coming up. A week from tomorrow night, Friday, March 4th, will be family night at the library. The theme is dragons. There'll be a lot of, the cost is free. Lots of games, story reading, and other dragon-related activities. So come hang out at the library, 6:30 to 8 p.m.
Does that mean the solicited help by the Mayor and council, is the additional dragons?
I've talked to Parks and Rec, and they will take all the story readers they can to share those stories, so.
Okay, very good.
In addition, we have a new curator at the Layton Heritage Museum. Got some really exciting things coming up. There's going to be an open house on March 31st from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., and it's a kickoff for 3 significant exhibits and activities. First of all, the William Allen Architect of Davis County exhibit. William Allen was an architect in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and designed a lot of really prominent buildings in Davis County, Kaysville. The mayor and myself are really attached to his work as we live in one of their homes.
We do.
Not the same home, but a couple of different homes.
Yeah, good clarification.
Yes. As in addition, there will be an exhibit, PBS Kids Great Outdoors Traveling Exhibit, The Wonders of the Earth. So that'll be cool to have here in the city. And also a weavings exhibit. The kickoff this will also be the kickoff for a William Allen scavenger hunt throughout Davis County that'll happen in the month of April. So some fun activities. The museum is open Monday through Thursday, 11 to 6 p.m., Friday, 11 to 5, and Saturday, 1 to 5 p.m. So, and again, that open house will be March 31st, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m.
Very good. That's exciting information there, and it's a great opportunity to meet the new curator as well. She's very good. Okay. Council member.
Okay, so I do have a couple of announcements as well. Davis Arts Council, they've already announced the Friday night films that will be playing for free during the summer. They've also announced the Sunday night concerts, and coming up on March 23rd, they're going to be releasing the summer concert series with the Summer Night with the Stars. So just keep your eyes peeled to their social media. They are excited to announce those to the public. And also OPA, they have a show beginning on tomorrow, Peter and the Starcatcher. It opens on Friday on their main stage. And they also have a small creators stage where they have 3 more shows this weekend of the Laramie Project. So feel free to check out any and all of the arts that are happening here in our city.
Okay, good. Does anyone else have any? If not, I'm just going to give one quick heads up for an activity that takes place with the American Red Cross and our fire department, and it's called Sound the Alarms. That's going to take place April 15th. There'll be more information coming on that, but certainly I know that we will need a lot of volunteers to help pull off this event. So if you can, mark your calendar for April 15th, and we'll give you more information at the next meeting. Sure.
I saw on the city's website this week that at the Public Works, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but there are sandbags available. We've got a lot of snow this year we're excited about, but it's going to come down eventually. So if there's concern of flooding in areas, you can go to Public Works and I believe bring your shovel and they provide the sand and the bags. Okay.
Okay, do you want to tell them where the Public Works is, just in case somebody doesn't know?
I'll let someone else quote that address.
Fort Lane?
Yeah, it's just south of Antelope Drive on Fort Lane.
On the west side of the street, across from the training tower.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there is a limit. I don't remember if it was 20 or 25 bags per resident. So you can't come in and take 500 bags, but they're meant to spread out. But
yeah. Well, that's a good effort, and I appreciate them being proactive there and having that available to our residents. Sure.
One more point of privilege. Take point of privilege.
Of course.
Thank
It's
you.
your birthday. Why not? Or coming up.
Almost. No, just yesterday, the Standard Examiner released their high school girls basketball all-region teams, and Northridge's Madison Hosino, she made first team, I believe, for Region 5 at Northridge.
Oh, cool.
And then also my brother got awarded Coach of the Year for his region. That's Chris Smith. He's the head coach for girls basketball at Northridge. So just wanted to give that kudos
That's
today.
very good. Yeah, congratulations. And hopefully we'll get the rest of the wrestling team in here from Layton High who did take state. I know that our staff has been working on that, so hopefully next month we'll be able to acknowledge them. One more announcement. Did you have one?
You talking to me?
Yeah, you looked like you was grabbing the mic.
Well, all I was just going to say was there's another lady that took all state as well. She sits over here.
Don't give away my secrets. Okay, let's move on. We have one verbal petition to read tonight, and it happens to be with the American Red Cross, so I'm excited to read this one for you. It says, whereas the American Red Cross has helped Americans prepare and respond to disasters for more than a century, and whereas last year, the local Red Cross chapter responded to 84 emergencies throughout the state of Utah. And whereas the Red Cross helped individuals and families throughout the state of Utah and the United States through emergency preparedness, preparation, blood donations, and providing life-saving skills and services. And whereas emergency messaging and critical community aware services were provided to 1,178 Utah military families whose loved ones served our nation through the armed forces. And whereas the state of Utah recognizes the American Red Cross and its volunteers in northern Utah for giving their time and talents to serve our residents. Now therefore be it proclaimed that Layton City declares our unwavering gratitude and support to the American Red Cross and its volunteers in northern Utah for giving their time and talent to serve our residents of Layton. In witness thereof, I cause the seal of Layton City, Utah to be affixed on this 16th day of March, 2023. So again, mark your calendars for the 16th if you want to help volunteer. Okay, we'll move on to our citizens' comment portion of our meeting. This is a portion of the meeting where you're welcome to come up and give your concerns to the council. And certainly where we do not have a public hearing tonight, if there's an item on the consent items that you wish to speak to, you're more than welcome to. This is the time that you would do that. But please keep in mind that we won't necessarily respond back to you, but all information will be taken into consideration. So the time is yours if you wish to address the council at this time. No? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and move on to our consent items tonight. And once again, these are items that are on our agenda, and the council, this is considered routine, and we can actually adopt all of these in one single motion. So we'll go ahead and start with that presentation with our very own Ms. Kim Reed, who's going to discuss our elections process for this year.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The city has contracted with Davis County for a number of years to administer its municipal election. 2023, we will have a municipal election. The county has the equipment, the resources, the knowledge, the experience, and security required to oversee an election carried out with integrity. The proposed cost to administer each election, a primary and the general, is proposed at $56,033.06 for each election. All 15 Davis County cities have already committed to contracting with the county to administer their respective elections. There are 3 city council positions up for this municipal election in 2023. Declaration of candidacy will take place June 1st through June 7th. A primary election is scheduled for Tuesday, August 15th, 2023, if more than 6 candidates if more than 6 candidates declare candidacy. The municipal election will be held on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. Do you have any questions?
Council, any questions here?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item number B, which is an appointment of our planning commission, and Mr. Chad Wilkinson will present that item. Not the item, the personnel.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is a resolution appointing a couple of new planning commissioners. We do have a couple of vacancies that have occurred in our planning commission. So the resolution before you tonight would appoint two new alternate members of the planning commission and would move a couple of our alternates to the regular member position in the planning commission. Just to remind you the process that we go through with these applications, we publish the vacancies online. People have a chance to submit an application. We then have an interview that occurs with a panel of folks that are made up of some of staff, a member of our city council, the mayor, and our current planning commission chair in this case. As we're interviewing several candidates, we have the mayor is recommending that Wesley, I want to make sure I get this name right, excuse me, Wesley Felice and Justin, I just moved my screen and it bumped me down. Sorry about that. Wesley Felice and Justin Whitworth be appointed as alternate members of the Planning Commission, and then Lindsay Hamilton and Scott Carter would be moved to regular members of the Planning Commission. Staff does recommend that the council approve the mayor's recommendation. I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Any questions?
I just had one question in the packet. Didn't mention the term date for the members who are taking full position. And I know it said that it was one that was already determined. I just didn't remember what that was.
I'd have to look that up myself, but it would just be the same term that they were appointed to originally. I can look that up for you if you'd like, but yeah.
That's fine. Just wanted to know. But it's their same term that they were appointed to as alternate members. So they'll just be carrying that time period out as full members of the commission.
That's right. Yeah, commissioners are, whether you're an alternate or a regular member, you have 3 terms available to you. Each of those are 3 years in length. So they'll still have that same opportunity to serve. Yep.
Okay, and Council, I hope you'd noticed that now we've had a couple of appointments that we've had to replace on the Planning Commission, and I think you can see my method here in the fact that I feel that if a member of the Planning Commission that is an alternate, if they prove themselves worthy, that they're attending the meetings, that by all means they should move up into the regular seat, and then any new members would come in as an alternate. And I think that this way it just mitigates any type of favoritisms or anything like that, but it just truly shows that we appreciate the support of these folks dedicating their time to our city. So it's just my way of saying thank you and moving them up. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item, which Mr. Wilkinson still has.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a subdivision amendment. This is for the Overlook subdivision. This will be the Overlook subdivision First Amendment. Just to show a background of the location of the property, it's approximately 1301 North, 400 East. It's on just off of Fort Lane at 1301 North. Just to give you an aerial view of what's around, you've got some surrounding agricultural zoning, some RS, and some single family that surrounds it on the west side. Here's another closer view of this property. This property outlined in red actually is constituted of 2 subdivision lots. These are lots 8 and 9 in the Overlook subdivision. The applicant would like to combine these 2 lots formally to vacate some easements that are there. There's some public utility and drainage easements that are existing there, and they'd like to build an accessory structure in the location of those easements. So this proposed subdivision amendment would combine those 2 lots, would vacate those existing easements that are about right here, so that they could build a structure on top of those where those easements were previously located. This is a copy of the previous plat. You can see the lots 8 and 9 that'll be consolidated into one larger lot. This arrow is pointing to a condition that was a part of the previous plat recording that'll still apply. Just to let you know what that is, parcel A shown here is a parcel that was set aside for future right-of-way. It was done this way as a parcel to maintain the setback, the required setback for the existing home, with a note that should that home ever be removed, that they'd have to build in a compliant location, and that parcel A would become public right-of-way right at that time. Right now, it's just got a sidewalk and is part of that parcel A, but it would become part of that public right-of-way at that time. That same note will carry forward to this amended plat and will become part of the any future redevelopment of the property. So with that, the Planning Commission did review this requested plat amendment at their February 28th meeting and did forward recommendation of approval for this proposed subdivision amendment. We would also echo that recommendation. be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chad. What does the combination of the lines, how does that vacate the easements?
The new plat that's been recorded over the top, the way that state law reads is that once you record a new plat, everything underneath that plat is now vacated. So that'll vacate any easements that were there. Those easements will be replaced with those easements that are shown here on this plat around the perimeter of the property. So it has the effect of vacating anything that was there before. One thing that's of note, these have already been combined for tax purposes at the county recorder, but that tax purposes does not vacate those easements. So in order for them to build this structure where they want to build it, that's got to be vacated.
Kind of along the same lines, what were those easements? Were they all held by Layton City, or?
It's a public utility and drainage easement, but typically those are also can be used by some of our private entities, CenturyLink, some of these other entities. So we do have releases that are required from them as well, just to make sure there's nothing in the ground.
So they weren't being used. They were just easements being held there.
Easements being held, but we do have to have those releases from those other agencies. Okay. So in case what that is it's an opportunity for them to tell us if they've installed something in those easements and make sure that we don't have anything that we're conflicting with.
Makes sense. Okay.
Good process to go through. Okay, anything else? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on then to item number D. And Mr. Gary Crane's going to actually present our repeal and reenactment of Title VIII.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council. The mayor's exactly right. Ordinance 23-05 provides for the repeal of Title VIII of our ordinance, which dealt with animal control, and the adoption of the county version of that Title VIII, which is their Title VI. And the reason for this is much like what we do with the traffic code, the state traffic code or the state criminal code, where the county is actually enforcing the animal control ordinance. Then we want it to be uniform as possible. And so this has actually been a version of the code that has been approved by all cities. It provides for, among other things, a maximum number of animals that is uniform now, whereas Layton City had 2 animal provision. This has a 3 animal provision with a provision for 1 more, which would be 4 animals with the approval of the county. And then, of course, your service animals that are truly service animals would also be excluded from that. That's just one demonstration of how we're just trying to make sure that everything's uniform throughout the county. And so this is the official adoption of the county ordinance, which will now be the ordinance that we prosecute to. Any questions that you might have regarding the ordinance? They're pretty much identical, except for just, as Mark Arrington indicated earlier, just kind of smoothing out some of the things that were more technical and substantive. So,
okay. Any questions? Nada? Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. That actually concludes all of our consent items. So with that, council, I'll bring it back to you for action. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 2319, the interlocal cooperative agreement with the county for municipal elections. Resolution 2320, the appointment to the Planning Commission, Scott Carter and Lindsay Hamilton as regular members, Wesley Felice and Justin Whitworth as alternate members. The amended plat for the Overlook Subdivision First Amendment, and Ordinance 23-05 repealing and reenacting our animal care and control in Layton City.
Good. Second. It's been moved in second that we adopt the consent items as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, we'll go ahead then and move on to other business on our agenda, which Mr. Crane is actually going to, again, take care of this item, which is Resolution 23-18.
Thanks, Mayor. Members of the council. Resolution 23-18 you may have seen before. And the reason is you approved a similar resolution, actually an identical resolution, in July of this year, or last year, 2022, I'm sorry. Resolution 2318 actually provides for the establishment of the right-of-way, the same thing that it did back in July. It provides for the establishment of the right-of-way for 2700 West, the alignment of 2700 West. As you may be aware, we've purchased most of the properties along 2700 West, providing for pretty much construction beginning from the north to the south. There are 2 properties that have not been able to acquire yet, and we're in the middle of litigation over those. The reason for bringing this resolution to you today is simply to do this, to provide that right now we've got a motion pending for immediate occupancy of those 2 properties. If we are not able to obtain that, then this would begin the process over correcting whatever issues the judge may see that need to be corrected, and we don't believe that there are any. We very, very strongly believe that we're going to prevail on that motion. But in case we didn't, we indicated to you that we would go down 2 tracks, the second track being to reestablish the resolution, the same resolution that you passed in July, and then we could proceed forward with legal action if we needed to, based on this resolution, if we needed to. And so with that, we would encourage you to approve this resolution. The notices have been properly sent to both property owners, both the Day properties and the Hines property. And the individuals involved in both of those properties, or owners of those properties, have been invited to speak this evening, but it would be up to the mayor to open that up to just those individuals to speak if they were to appear tonight. It doesn't look like they're here, but if they were, they would have that opportunity tonight. So with that, we would recommend that you approve Resolution 2318, allowing us to reestablish that process and to be able to proceed forward if we need to, if we don't prevail on the 30th when we've got our hearing on the motion for immediate occupancy.
Okay, very good. Just for my own clarification, is anyone here in the audience associated with either of these 2 properties? Just to make sure. Okay, very good, because otherwise I would definitely allow for that conversation to take place. So with that, council, I'll bring it back to you to see if you have any questions or concerns or further discussion.
Just one question, Gary. The resolution we passed last year, I know it was the same resolution, but was it for the same properties, or did it involve other properties that were acquired?
So it defined the alignment of the road, which is the same as the July resolution. However, there are only 2 properties left to acquire
at that time,
and now there's only 2 left to acquire. So it would cover those 2 properties. The rest of them have been purchased. So.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'll look for a motion or action.
I move that we approve Resolution 23-18.
Okay. And Gary, I'm assuming I can just do a unanimous vote here, or does it have to be individual?
Individuals would be
All
good on this one.
Okay, knowing that, then I will. I do. I know that. I just
I'm
wanted
sorry.
clarification. I was just making sure. But yes, so whoever would like to second the motion, the motion to adopt the resolution 2318, please do so. So who wants to second it before we? Come on, birthday girl.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Okay, knowing that now, because I wasn't quite sure on it, so
I
thank you for
apologize.
that.
I didn't understand what you were saying.
Yeah, I probably wasn't that clear anyway. Okay, with that, I'll start down here with Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Okay, Councilmember Smith Edmonton. Edmondson. How's that?
Aye.
Okay, Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Box. And Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous that we go ahead and adopt Resolution 2318. Okay, that concludes all the items on the agenda. However, I do have one small little unfinished business, as I've been alluding to tonight regarding birthday acknowledgements. We would like to do that amongst our council members. So tonight, we have a special request from our birthday girl regarding donuts. And these aren't just regular donuts. This was her request. These are, look, fancy donuts. So with that, I'm going to have you take the first one, and you can pass them on. And now I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we adjourn so we can eat the donuts.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you attending our meeting this evening, and have a good week.